So Jewett, come on up. Christa over here. And can we welcome Christa? She comes up. Yay. So one of the things we also do on First Saturdays, which is our family Saturday, is we not only celebrate life, we celebrate covenant, we celebrate Jesus and his transforming power to change us through the gospel. And so we get to have a little transformation moment with Christa and hear a little of her story. It's so powerful. We went around the room and just got entangled in each other's lives and began to ask some questions like, hey, tell me some of your journey. We'd be amazed at like what has happened in people's lives in this room. It's very important because, you know, we're all a part of this big story. Our stories are crossing over the top of each other, and it's all unto Jesus and to his glory. So, Christa, a little bit about you. Tell us, were you raised in a Christian family? Give us a little bit of context for your upbringing so that we can just kind of hear how your journey began and then where God kind of took you from there. So give us a little insight into that.
Hello, everyone. I'm a little nervous with all this stuff here because I gesture, so I feel like this stuff is at risk.
It's all good.
So I was actually raised in a Christian home. I literally started attending church when I was like a month old. So I have a long history in the church. And I mean, obviously I was raised in a Christian home as well. But as I was going through that journey of being a part of church culture for so long, I really developed what can only be described as like a religious mindset, and that.
What do you mean by that? Describe that a little bit to us.
Yeah.
What does that mean to you?
So, well, it was about doing. I think that's what it was.
Okay.
It was very easy to take on the actions of appearing Christ-like without actually having the heart of being Christ-like, And so, like, when you're under that religious mindset, you're kind of looking at, look at what I'm doing. Like, it's a transactional exchange, I guess I'll say it that way, where, like, you kind of are still living under the oppression of the law, and you're saying, like, this is everything that I'm doing for God, so why isn't he showing up the way that I'm expecting him to? And so I had huge expectations for the Lord, and I also had this bizarre kind of perception of him where he was like kind of this domineering boss, and the only way to please that kind of like taskmaster was just to do more, And so I was just doing, and I was so focused on doing. And, it kind of got to the point like where I was just exhausted. Like, I was just exhausted because the Lord had also given me a huge heart to serve him in ministry. But I felt like the only way to please that taskmaster was just to do more, do more, do more, do more. And it kind of came to a head like 3 years ago. And
so a long journey.
Oh, yeah, long
first
journey.
Process. So
Yeah.
what was the catalyst that like really shifted things and where it began to turn?
Yeah, I was burnt out. I was angry. There was like a really big root of bitterness in my life. How I would encourage myself. This is my encouragement, people. So I had this vision of me collapsing at the gate of heaven at the feet of Jesus and being like, it was worth it, so
Completely worn out.
It was like completely exhausted, like
all
just
life drained,
like it,
100%.
I know, and that's how I would encourage myself. Like, you're just gonna make it, just make it, girl, And I felt like the only way to serve Jesus was to be exhausted for Jesus,
right.
Which is so not his heart,
And a little miserable as well. That kind of helps. Throw that little misery in there. Exhaustion, misery.
I know.
You're on the right track.
Yes, it was horrible. It sounds really bad when you talk about it like that, but it's true. There's just a lot of self-flagellation, if you will, in a religious mindset. And so, that was a big part of my journey, and there was a lot of other stuff going on. But like literally 3 years ago, I just had it out. I had it out with God. And I just was like really angry, and I just kind of yelled
But he's a big boy.
Yeah, I know.
Right? It's so important for us to realize that.
Yeah.
That we can get honest with God, too, about what's going on the inside. Sometimes we don't think that that's possible.
So I kind of yelled at him. And yeah, I kind of yelled at him for a while. And I was like, is this it? Is this all that you have for me? Like, this is it? This is your abundant life, being exhausted for you. And it was so clear to me. He responded and was like, I never told you to do all that. And I was like, oh. And so it was literally like a paradigm shift. And I was like, you didn't? Okay, so what does it look like then? And that's what kind of just started the process. And he literally just started like removing burdensome things from me, and just kind of slowly like removing the beliefs that I had about him that were false. And, the expectations. He was revealing to me the expectations that I had of him. And it was just like a lot. It was a lot really fast. I'd been on this long journey, and then all of a sudden it was like, complete paradigm shift. And so through that process, I had been going to a church for 14 years. And through that process, he led me to leave that church. And it felt deeply unsettling. You'll see a theme here. I whined about it. So I whined about it. It's a reoccurring theme in my testimony. So I was whining at him about it, and the word he gave me was so clear, because I was like, God, you want me to start over? I'm really comfortable here. And it was so clear, his response. He was like, comfort is the enemy of spiritual growth, and if left unchecked, will lead to complacency. And I was like, so I was like, okay, I'm gonna leave this church. And it was really hard. These people were like my family. And so I was just like, what do I do now? I didn't have any plans to go anywhere else. I was just like, okay. So I really felt like I was adrift, like the word that I really used to describe that season was untethered. Like I felt like I had been like kind of set adrift, And I started trying churches, and I ended up trying the Harbor in that time. And okay, people, I come from a very conservative church background. So when I first came to Harbor, I was like, what is going on? And I've never encountered spontaneous worship. And so I was like, are we singing one song? Are we singing 5? Like, what is happening right now? I came from like a very structured, like you sing 5 songs, each one is 3 minutes, and then everybody gets off. And so I was like, what is happening? And I felt so uncomfortable, but I knew that God wanted me here. I knew that he wanted me here for a variety of reasons. And it was like every time I came, you were addressing, or whoever was speaking was addressing something that I needed to relearn and a perspective that God was trying to change. I just sat back and watched, and watched how the church operated. And it was so like healing. And I was like, what is happening here? Like, this is so different from anything that I have ever experienced. And a few years ago, the Lord gave me a scripture, and he kept saying it to me over and over throughout the years. And it was, I am the Lord who brought you out of Egypt. Open your mouth wide and I will fill it, And so I was praying, and I was like my perspective of that verse is that you can have as much of God as you want. God is a gentleman. He's not going to force himself on you. If you open your mouth a little bit, that's what you get, But he's like, if you open your mouth wide, I will satisfy you greatly with abundance, And so I was praying, and I'm like, God, I want all of you. I had no idea what I was praying. I was like, I want all of you, God. I want all of you. I had no idea, and I'd been praying this for like 5-6 years, I want all of you, and I was like, I don't want a slice of the apple. I want the whole apple, and I just kind of had this picture of like the little infants that are trying new food, and you can be like, no, I don't want that, or, you can be the kid that tries ice cream for the first time and face plants in it, like you can be either or.
Yes.
And I felt like God's like, face plant, and so when I came here, I was just like, wow, like the people I encountered, I was like, they want the whole apple. Like the people here, the people that I've engaged with and I've chatted with, I'm like, they want the whole apple. And that was such a blessing to me. Like that was such a blessing, because I didn't feel at any time like I was dealing with people that had set boundaries for God. Like that's the religious mindset when you say, this is how far I'll go with you, Lord, but I'm not going to go any further. And I didn't encounter any of that. And that was such a blessing. And I was like, wow, this is really cool. And like the analogy that came to mind when I was thinking about this, like Harbor really is a safe place. It's so well named. And I praise the Lord for that. It really is a safe place. And I really feel like this has been a space where like God has hidden me while he dealt with my mess, And the image that he gave me was of a caterpillar going into the cocoon, and like the Harbor's kind of been a cocoon as I dissolved into nasty goo, and but he's doing something to like regenerate like something new, and he's bringing apart something new that's going to be beautiful. And so like I've really felt like this has been my shelter, like this has been my cocoon, and this has been my safe place to deal with the goo.
Give us just one last thing. Give us an insight into Christa now compared to when you first started coming to Harbor. Like one big aha that's really transformed your life, that's actually, you've seen the fruit of that now in the way that you live.
Yeah, there's so many, but like as I was sharing with you earlier, I'm so excited about this one. And I really felt like the Lord led me to like talk about it. So when I was like in my 20s, I was just pursuing my version of success. And I just go hard at whatever my goal is. Like I just go all out, And so I was just going hard after this vision I had of what success was. And I really had this sense that God was like, hey, like, come and spend time with me. And like, it was like months that I just sensed this. Like, he was like, come away with me. And I'm like, I don't even know what that looks like. Like, what is that? Like, okay. So I kind of set apart a weekend, and I went on a camping trip by myself, and I like sat in my tent, and I was like, okay, like now what, And I'm here in my tent by myself. And during that time, he gave me Psalm 73, and it became very important to me, and I memorized part of it that weekend, and it was just a big moment. And then I just kind of, did life. Well, earlier this year, he brought Psalm 73 back to me, and I was just taking a moment. It was like in May, and I was just reflecting on all of the cool stuff that God had been doing in my life and the transformation that I'd experienced, and just how he's changed so much, really about my perspective, about who I am, who he is, his purpose for me, like just so much. And I was just kind of like reflecting on it and just like so grateful. And I was thinking about what I was like before, and the verse that came to mind was, when I thought that way, I was a brute and ignorant beast before you. And I was like, where's that? So I Googled it, and it was Psalm 73 again. And I was like, oh my gosh, that really does describe me, because I captured the effort of serving God, but I really missed out on the heart of Jesus and how he saw people, and how, what my identity was in him. Like I just missed out on his heart. Like I was 1 Corinthians 13, I was a loud noise, because that's what you are when you don't have love, you're just a loud noise. And so I was just like so grateful. And so then I started go through Psalm 73 again. And I don't know about you guys, but there are some times when God just like flips a light on, and it's like full illumination, and you're like, oh my gosh, like this is what you've been doing. And so as I was going through the chapter, I realized like the first part, so high level overview, it starts off with Asaph whining. I can relate, okay? So he's my guy, right? So it starts off with him kind of whining about like, look at all the wicked and how easy their life is, and everything prospers for them. And, like for me, it's kind of like pointless that I've honored the law because my life is hard, And so he's kind of whining about it. And then it says, all of this was oppressive to me until I entered the sanctuary of God. And then I understood their final destiny. And so like by entering the presence of the Lord, he gained perspective. And then from that moment, it transitions into an expression of desire to be in the presence of God, and just this wonderful expression of joy and just like gratitude over what the Lord has done. And then the conclusion is, I have made the sovereign Lord my refuge, and I will tell of all your deeds. You know, like that's the conclusion. And so as I was going through this, like the Lord was like, this has been your journey. This is the journey you've been on. I've been taking you from the transition of like religion, of kind of like whininess, you know, over like the burdensome, you know, religion that required, you know, the oppressive burden that you were under. I've changed your perspective by having you spend time in my presence, and now it's joy and relationship, and it's a message to share. And so here's the thing, people. This is what got me. So I was like, okay, when was the first time that God gave me this? And so I went back and I looked in my journal, and it was 18 years ago. 18 in Scripture symbolizes escaping bondage. And I was like, oh my gosh, like this is what God has been doing in my life for 18 years, bringing me to the process to escape the bondages of religiosity. And so I just wanted to encourage, if anybody feels like they're in a long season, you know, like the Lord is wooing you. You know, he is drawing you out of that religiosity or wherever it is, whatever that situation is. Like, he doesn't force himself on you. You know, he's not like, eat the peas, you know, and trying to like force your mouth open, you know, like he's like drawing you and like wooing you to himself, you know, and he's walking you through that wilderness and that situation at your own pace. You know, but he's always working everything together for your good. And so I just wanted to encourage you guys with that, because that's what he's done.
Let's
for
give
me.
it up for Christa. Thank you.